Sampson, state senator from Wolcott. Thank you for being here. You're one of the smart ones, but you know how true that is, right?
Absolutely. Government is stupid. I say it all the time myself.
So I was kind of horrified. I saw a story that posted last night on the Connecticut Mirror. Headline, jobless benefits for strikers in Connecticut. Idea is dividing labor committee. And you sit on the labor committee, as I recall. And I'm thinking,
yes,
is Rob Sampson pushing something where they want to pay unemployment benefits to people for belonging to a union?
That sounds likely, doesn't it? No, on the contrary. So this is not a new thing, Todd. We actually had this bill come before the Labor Committee last year, and I am indeed a member of the Labor Committee. In fact, I'm the ranking member, which is kind of like the minority chairman. And we fought it hard in the committee last year, but they got it through the Senate. I put up a tremendous fight there. I mean, several-hour debate and really calling attention to something that is absurd. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we see more and more the state government interfering where it doesn't belong. And there are a couple of themes I want to talk about. It was my intention to come on and talk to you with. But one of them is that contracts between employer and employee. We see it all the time, even the minimum wage or paid family leave or something like this, where they're going to interfere with what is a voluntary contract in America, the ability for adult-free citizens to get together and make an agreement about some sort of work that needs to be accomplished. Nothing could be more American, and yet governments, large and small, across our country want to stick their nose in there, prevent people from engaging in different types of contracts. And this is just an example where they want to put the scale to benefit employees. And you know why they do it, Todd. It's because, as we've discussed many times, it's because the Democrat business model nowadays is to exploit the various factions that exist in our world. There are more employees than employers. So obviously, if you are going to try and write a policy, you want to benefit the employees because you'll get their support. And it's a great way to vilify others who don't necessarily want to support the employer versus the employee, but we just want the government to stay out of it and keep the playing field level.
Yes, but in this case, the idea of giving union workers unemployment benefits for being on strike for more than 2 weeks, that is an absolutely abhorrent policy idea. Like it's disgusting. There should be criminal laws if you could criminalize being overtly hostile to the idea of having a democratic system, that you would pay, that people going to work every day who don't belong to a union would have to pay for unemployment benefits to be given to their fellow citizens for voluntarily refusing to go to work so they can leverage their employers to pay them more.
Todd, it's only a tier 2 bad idea. I know that sounds crazy, but I can tell you that there's a lot worse bills than that one. But you're absolutely right, because effectively you are giving an incentive to have more striking workers, and you are unleveling the playing field so they have an advantage in that negotiation. And ultimately, it's the employer who's contributing to the unemployment compensation fund, which is, bankrupt, and they're being forced to pay more and more all the time. It is devious and evil. But believe it or not, there is another bill in the same committee that it would require, in a striking situation, it would require the employer to continue paying for the health benefits of the striking worker. That's even worse, because that's a direct payment. I asked Senator Martin Looney, who is the president of the Senate, the highest-ranking Democrat in our legislature. It's his bill. He came before the Labor Committee. He sat in front of me, and I asked him a dozen questions or so on this issue. You can find that video on my Facebook or my Instagram, and it'll blow you away. But he thinks it's completely justified that employers should have to pay the health insurance for people who go on strike. I asked him, I said, why don't you just make the law so they have to keep paying them? I mean, what's the difference?
Why doesn't he? What was his answer to that?
Yeah, no, he said that's a pretty good idea, Senator. Honest to God, that was his attitude.
I don't get why they don't. Why don't they propose just take all of the policies from the Kremlin from 50 years ago? Why don't they just, in one vote, do one of those? What do they call those votes where they dump everything into a bin and you just vote for it?
Right, an omnibus bill.
Omnibus, yeah. Why don't they make the communist Kremlin omnibus bill and just do it all in one vote? Because they are trying to create a communist society.
Oh, they absolutely are. And they've got their foot on the gas this year. People should be alarmed. I mean, the Democrats, look, the modern Democratic Party has gone far, far to the left over the last decade or so. The last few moderate Democrats that existed in the state legislature, they were leaving when I was coming in. Mm-hmm. There's none left. The people that are serving in the state and federal level that are calling themselves Democrats are radicals. They want to offer this odd blend of Marxism and socialism as our state and federal policy. And you're right. The only thing holding them back is they try and push the envelope as far as they can without getting too much blowback from the public. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that in Connecticut, since they keep winning elections despite doing the craziest things you can imagine, they are emboldened, and they're going to continue to be. And more than anything, what I need, Todd, is for listeners to understand that they've got to start participating in the process. The other night, there was a public hearing.
Wait, excuse me. Let me just interrupt this thought one sec. We've got to take a quick break. Do you have time to wait through that?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're talking to State Senator Rob Sampson from Wolcott. He's going to tell us a good story about the other night. In case I forget, you can remind him. When we continue on WTIC.
Now,
State Senator Rob Sampson of Wolcott is here. We're talking about some of the crazy crap that the Democrats are pounding through the legislature and talking about. Even that they talk about this stuff is bizarre. And Rob is filling us in on some of the stuff that's going on. So you were going to tell us about something that happened the other night, Rob.
Right. Tuesday, there was a public hearing in the Human Services Committee. It began, I think, around 11 a.m. or noon or so. And it was regarding House Bill 6616, which is an act concerning the expansion of Husky health benefits to those ineligible due to immigration status. Mm-hmm. Effectively, free health care for illegal aliens up to age 26. And this hearing went on all day and most of the night, it was well past midnight. I think I gave up watching a little after midnight. But what's interesting about it is that they had maybe 700 or so pieces of testimony submitted. And I will tell you, out of those 700 or so pieces of testimony, fewer than a dozen were in opposition to the bill. And if you watch the hearing, it was one person after another on there testifying in favor of this policy. These are how these things advance and become law. It is because there are so few people, and I know this would not be a very popular policy in my town. If I went door to door and started asking, I don't think I'd find anyone who was in favor of it. But if
were these people speaking in support of this measure? Were they bussed in members of communities that it would directly affect?
Mostly. I can't speak to whether they were bussed in. Many of them were joining via Zoom. But there were a fair number of people in person, and a lot of them did not speak English, and many of them were not even under age 26, so they were not directly impacted. And I don't know that they truly understood the scope and breadth of the bill, but the fact of the matter is it's the Democrat majority trying to cater to another population and trying to legitimize what is really ignoring federal immigration law.
But isn't this worse, Rob, that they're trying to use a particular moment where they've gotten complete control of state government and the media coverage has suddenly become almost nil in the state for this kind of thing? Like if you had a newspaper in the state that wanted to generate some buzz and be meaningful to the political discussion, they would be blazing headlines about bills like these and causing people to become aware. But what they're doing now, the Democrats, it seems to me, is rebuilding the infrastructure of what the default position of the legal structure of the state is, so that even if rational people someday get control of state government again and America is still in business, that they will be, it'll be a big job to get it switched back to something sustainable.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the main problems we have is that, we've talked about it many, many times. I mean, the far left has control of education. They have control of entertainment, the news media. It is very hard to express an opposing view. It really has become more difficult. But as I said, these bills are just some examples. There are so many examples, and I would say that there are three major themes this year. We already talked about interfering with private contracts, but there's also you don't own your body. That's a theme. And you don't own your children's body either, because you don't have a choice on whether your child that's 12 years or older getting a vaccine without your consent. Mm-hmm. We have bills also put in by the Democrat Senate Majority Leader about organ donation to make you a mandatory organ donor, or to say that
if you ride a motorcycle without a helmet, you're referring to, right?
You've probably heard of that one. These are just a few examples. There are dozens of bills like this. And, on the surface, that may seem like, well, that's not a totally unreasonable thing. He's trying to make a point about helmets. No, they're trying to make a point about who owns your body. That's the point they're trying to make. And property rights.
We've got just 1 minute, so give us a quickie on that.
Now, I really wanted to go through a list of hearings that are coming up this week, but I would just encourage people to follow me on social media, sign up for my email, senatorsampson.com. I'm going to be listing 4 very important things we ought to get involved in.
A big job to get it switched back to something sustainable.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the main problems we have is that, we've talked about it many, many times. I mean, the far left has control of education. They have control of entertainment, the news media. It is very hard to express an opposing view. It really has become more difficult. But as I said, these bills are just some examples. There are so many examples, and I would say that there are 3 major themes this year. We already talked about interfering with private contracts, but there's also you don't own your body. That's a theme. And you don't own your children's body either, because, you don't have a choice on whether your child that's 12 years or older getting a vaccine without your consent. Mm-hmm. We have bills also put in by the Democrat Senate Majority Leader about organ donation to make you a mandatory organ donor, or to say that
if you ride a motorcycle without a helmet, you're referring to, right?
You've probably heard of that one. These are just a few examples. There are dozens of bills like this. And, on the surface, that may seem like, well, that's not a totally unreasonable thing. He's trying to make a point about helmets. No, they're trying to make a point about who owns your body. That's the point they're trying to make. And property rights.
We've got just 1 minute, so give us a quickie on that.
Now, I really wanted to go through a list of hearings that are coming up this week, but I would just encourage people to follow me on social media, sign up for my email, senatorsampson.com. I'm going to be listing 4 very important things we ought to get involved in this very week to show up for hearings and try and stop the majority, and one thing where we ought to encourage Republicans, which is on fixing our electric rates in the state.
Okay, so I'm off on Monday. Maybe Tuesday you could come on. Well, just anytime you can. Come on every day if you can. And be Paul Revere and just ring the alarm.
I will do my best, Todd. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Good to talk with you. State Senator Rob Sampson of Wolcott. He is a almost a lone voice up at the state capitol for rational policies. Otherwise, they're trying to drive the state off a cliff that it can never, I guess that's what it means to go over the cliff. You can't get back. There's no ladder to climb back up, and that's what they're doing. 860-522